The storm raged like a beast unleashed, its violent fury crashing against the ancient redwood trees, each thunderclap more deafening than the last. The skies split open in a flash of blinding white light, casting a ghostly glow over the forest. In the heart of this chaos, a small figure darted between the shadows, her breath ragged and shallow, her tiny heart pounding as loud as the storm around her. Emily Evans, no older than 5, was drenched to the bone. Her nightgown clung to her small frame, streaked with mud and blood from the jagged branches that reached out to grab her. Barefoot, her feet were raw, torn by roots and rocks as she ran deeper into the forest, blindly fleeing the nightmare she'd just witnessed. Behind her, the voices of men echoed through the storm, cold, commanding, searching. "Find her! Don't let anyone escape." The words were sharp, angry, punctuated by the crack of thunder that seemed to crack open the very earth. Welcome to the HeartForce channel, where you and I find more meaning in life through dog stories. Before we continue, please comment below and let us know where you're listening to this video. And if you have any stories about my loyal friend, please share them with us. Emily pressed herself against the massive trunk of a redwood, her body shaking with fear. The flashlight beams from the men's search spread out before her, cutting through the downpour. They were close, too close. She could see them, the men who had just taken everything from her, who had taken her parents. A flash of lightning illuminated the night, casting the scene in an eerie light. There, between the trees, Emily saw them. Her parents, Sarah and David Evans, stood firm, their faces full of fear but also defiance. Her mother clutched a bundle of research papers to her chest, shaking her head at Maxwell's men. "You can't hide this forever, Maxwell. People will know what you're doing to these forests." Sarah's voice rang out as she stood her ground against the approaching threat. David stood between his wife and the men, his hands raised in a futile gesture of peace. "Please, just let us go," he pleaded. "We'll stop, we'll stay silent." But the gunshots were louder than his words. As if the storm wasn't enough, the crack of gunfire shattered the air. And Emily watched in horror as her parents crumpled to the ground. Her scream was swallowed whole by the wind, and for a moment, everything went silent, save for the pouring rain. Heavy footsteps approached, and Emily's body went rigid. She didn't dare move. They were coming for her now. She was next. Without thinking, without a plan, she ran. She ran into the pitch-black forest, her tiny body weaving between trees and branches, the rain smacking against her skin. She could feel the wet earth beneath her feet, and the pain of every new scratch and bruise was ignored as her terror pushed her forward. But it didn't last long. Emily's legs, weak and trembling, soon gave out, and she collapsed in a hollow beneath a towering redwood. The storm above her was relentless, but there was another sound now, something different. Low, menacing growls broke through the chaos. Emily froze. Her eyes met a pair of glowing yellow eyes in the darkness. And then, the unmistakable shape of a wolf emerged from the shadows, a massive gray figure. The wolf's eyes locked onto her, and for a moment, Emily thought the end had come. But the growl wasn't for her. It was a warning. The alpha wolf stepped forward, its body scarred, its presence commanding. It was Papa Wolf, the leader of the pack, the one who would protect her. Emily's breath caught in her throat, but she couldn't look away. Behind him, the pack emerged. 5 more wolves, their eyes fixed on her, their presence a living barrier between her and the dangers of the storm and the men hunting her. She couldn't move, couldn't speak. For the first time since her world had been torn apart, she felt safe. The wolves surrounded her, their warm bodies shielding her from the raging storm and from the violence that had just taken her family. She was no longer alone. Papa Wolf stepped forward, sniffing at the air, then at Emily's trembling hand. The bond formed in that moment was stronger than anything Emily could have understood. It wasn't just survival anymore. This was protection, this was family. The pack circled her, and Emily could feel the soft nuzzles against her skin. Her heart slowed, and for the first time that night, she felt a flicker of hope. The ancient trees watched silently, the storm raging on, but for Emily, the world had shifted. She was no longer just a frightened child running from a storm. She was part of something larger, something wild, something alive. And so, in the deepest heart of the redwood forest, a bond was formed that would change everything. Emily woke to silence. The storm had passed, leaving only a few heavy drops splashing onto the forest floor, mingling with the earthy scent of the redwood trees. Her small body, though still bruised and battered from her flight through the storm, lay nestled against the base of a massive redwood, its roots creating a natural shelter. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and the faint musk of the pack, a lingering warmth that still clung to her skin. She wasn't alone. Papa Wolf lay nearby, his massive form stretched out protectively in front of her, his glowing eyes ever watchful. The pack was spread out around her, their bodies close enough to form a barrier, yet not suffocating, just enough to shield her from the world outside. The young girl had fallen asleep almost instantly, her exhaustion taking over. Now she stirred slightly, still trembling from the cold, but also from the nightmarish memories that clung to her thoughts like shadows. The wolves had saved her, but in a way, they had also kept her from facing the pain of what had happened. She could still hear her mother's voice in her head, calling out to her father as they stood their ground, fighting for something bigger than themselves. Her mother's fierce green eyes, her father's protective hands, those images were burned into her memory. But now in the forest, in the midst of the wolves, Emily could feel something else, something new. It was a strange comfort, one she had never known. The wolves weren't just animals, weren't just predators. They were family. They were her family now, bound together by a sense of survival and, somehow, an unspoken understanding. As the morning light began to filter through the towering trees, Emily pushed herself up, her muscles protesting against the movement. She had grown stronger, more accustomed to the wild, even in just the short time she had spent with the pack. Papa Wolf's watchful eyes followed her every move as she slowly stood, brushing dirt from her nightgown. It was then that the pack stirred. Luna, the alpha female, moved closer to Emily, her amber eyes filled with the same protectiveness Emily had come to know from Papa Wolf. The rest of the pack, Shadow, Storm, River, and Star, followed suit, forming a loose circle around her. They weren't just guarding her from the dangers of the forest. They were guiding her, teaching her in ways words could never explain. Emily's gaze flicked between them, understanding that, somehow, these wolves knew her, and they were going to help her survive this new world she had found herself in. It wasn't long before she felt the first stirrings of hunger. Her stomach growled quietly, a reminder that she hadn't eaten since the night her life had been shattered. As though sensing her need, Luna moved off toward the forest's edge, her sharp eyes scanning the surroundings. Emily followed at a distance, her small feet slipping over the damp earth. Papa Wolf remained by her side, his steps steady, and she trusted him. She trusted all of them, even if she didn't fully understand why. The forest was alive in a way she had never noticed before. Every leaf, every rustle of the wind, every small animal scurrying through the underbrush held new significance. Emily felt like she was part of something ancient, something that transcended the world she had once known. Soon, Luna returned, her mouth holding a small rabbit, still warm. She dropped it before Emily, who looked up at Papa Wolf, her eyes questioning. "It's okay." A soft voice, her father's voice, echoed in her mind. "Wolves are nature's guardians, Emily. They protect the wild, and in return, the wild offers its bounty." Emily blinked away the memory. She wasn't sure if it was the storm, or the wolves, or her own hunger, but she felt connected to the world around her in a way she hadn't before. The instinct to survive, to adapt, was strong now. As she crouched beside the rabbit, her hands trembling, she realized something. She wasn't just surviving with the wolves. They had become her family. And as she tore into the rabbit, her teeth biting into the raw meat, she felt the wildness settle within her. She was no longer just a child lost in the storm. She was part of something bigger now, part of a pack. The pack that would teach her how to live. Hours later, as the day wore on and the sun began to dip low in the sky, Emily felt something shift within her. She had already learned so much. She had learned how to move quietly through the forest, how to listen for danger, and how to trust her instincts. She had learned how to rely on the pack, but she also knew that eventually she would have to face the world beyond the forest. She would have to face the truth about what happened to her parents. But as the night approached and the stars began to pierce the dark sky above, Emily felt the weight of the day lift. Papa Wolf sat beside her, his large form a comforting presence. The pack surrounded them, their energy calm, their gaze watchful but peaceful. In that moment, Emily knew one thing for sure. No matter what the future held, she wouldn't face it alone. The days blurred together in a cycle of survival and adaptation. Emily's body grew stronger as she spent more time with the wolves. The pack taught her how to navigate the dense forest, how to recognize the sounds of danger, and how to connect with the world in ways she never thought possible. She could hear the subtle rustle of animals hidden in the underbrush, feel the shift in the wind before a storm, and, most surprisingly, communicate with the wolves in ways that felt both wild and strangely human. Papa Wolf led her, Luna watched over her, and the rest of the pack, Shadow, Storm, River, and Star, became her companions, her new family. She moved with them as if she had always belonged in the forest, her once tender feet now calloused from running through the harsh terrain. Every part of her body had adapted to the wild, and Emily, though still a child, had learned to thrive in a world of shadows, survival, and untamed beauty. But as the days passed, the weight of her parents' death began to grow heavier. Emily could hear the distant echoes of their voices, her mother's gentle, firm tone, her father's reassuring presence. They were still with her. In her heart, in the forest. They had fought for this land, for the forest, for the creatures within it. And now, it was her turn to carry on their fight. One afternoon, as the sun filtered through the trees, casting dappled light across the forest floor, Emily found herself standing at the edge of a clearing. The wolves had stopped their hunt, sensing something. They stood, silent and alert, their eyes fixed on her. The moment felt significant, as if the forest itself had paused to give her a choice. Her hand instinctively went to her side, where a small branch lay. It wasn't much, but it was a weapon, a reminder of the old world, the world she had lost. Her chest tightened as the sound of approaching voices broke the silence. Emily's heart raced. The pack was already in position, their low growls reverberating in the air. They had sensed the threat before she had. Her parents had once told her to listen to the forest, to trust it. And now, as her instincts kicked in, she realized that they had been right. The forest was alive. The forest was her ally. She crouched, watching through the brush as two figures emerged from the trees. They were men, dressed in weathered camouflage, their movements deliberate as they scanned the area. Emily's blood ran cold. These weren't the first people she had encountered since the storm, but they were different. These men carried weapons, dangerous, familiar weapons. Weapons meant to hurt, to destroy. The pack moved silently, a shadowy blur of strength and unity. Papa Wolf was at the front, his scarred muzzle held high, his posture one of dominance. The men didn't notice the pack at first. Their attention focused on something beyond the trees. But Emily could see them clearly, their faces hardened with purpose, eyes sharp and intent on something she couldn't yet understand. Then, a voice rang out from the distance. "Come on, we gotta find her. The girl's out there somewhere." A chill ran through Emily. They were looking for her. The men weren't just searching for animals. They were hunting her. Without thinking, Emily moved, her body instinctively following the pack's silent lead. She knew what she had to do. She had to get away. The men had come for her, and the forest would shield her, but only if she kept moving. Papa Wolf's eyes flicked to hers, and in that fleeting moment, Emily understood. They were protecting her, but they couldn't do it alone. She had to fight. A sharp, protective growl echoed from the pack, and suddenly, the wolves lunged forward, their bodies moving as one. The men, caught off guard, turned quickly, but the wolves were too fast, too powerful. In an instant, the forest was alive with the sound of growls, the flash of claws, and the heavy thud of paws against the forest floor. Emily watched in awe as the wolves moved with precision. Luna darted around the men, forcing them into a corner. Shadow, Storm, and River flanked them, their eyes locked onto their prey. Papa Wolf stood tall, his gaze fixed on the leader of the group, the man who had raised his weapon toward Emily. But as the man hesitated, the wolves stopped. Emily felt the tension in the air. The wolves weren't just predators, they were guardians. They weren't here to kill. They were here to protect. The man took a step back, lowering his weapon, his hands shaking. His eyes flicked between the wolves, and then to Emily, standing at the edge of the clearing, her small figure poised like a wild spirit. She was no longer the terrified child who had fled through the storm. She was something else now. Emily took a slow, deliberate step forward. She didn't need to speak. Her presence, the bond she had formed with the pack, said everything. "Leave," she said, her voice low but clear, blending human words with a slight growl, a sound that was almost wolf-like. The wolves stood at her side, a barrier between her and the men. The men hesitated, their eyes wide, unsure of what they were facing. After a tense moment, one of them turned, muttering under his breath, "This ain't worth it. Let's go." They retreated, their footsteps fading into the forest. The pack, though alert, remained calm. Emily's heart still pounded, but she could feel the pack's strength, their unwavering loyalty. They had protected her, and in return, she had protected them. As the forest returned to its quiet rhythm, Emily sank to her knees. Her small hands pressed to the earth. She could feel the pulse of the land beneath her fingers, the heartbeat of the ancient redwoods echoing in her soul. She had come to understand something profound in that moment. This was her home now. Not just the place, but the people, her family, the wolves. And she would protect it just as her parents had. Days turned to weeks, and as the weeks passed, Emily became more deeply entrenched in the world of the pack. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. She was changing, evolving, becoming part of the forest in ways she had never imagined. The wolves, once just protectors, were now her teachers. They taught her to understand the language of the forest, the subtle signs that indicated danger, the patterns of the animals she had once known only as fleeting shadows. Every day brought new lessons, new challenges, and new triumphs. But with these changes, Emily began to feel the weight of her parents' deaths press more heavily on her. She could no longer ignore the gaping hole they had left in her heart. She had learned to survive, but survival wasn't enough. She needed answers. She needed to know what had happened to them. One day, as Emily sat beside Papa Wolf, her eyes staring into the depths of the forest, she felt something shift in the air. A cold breeze swept through the trees, carrying with it a familiar scent, one that made her blood run cold. The men were back, but this time Emily didn't feel fear. She felt anger, the kind of anger that surged through her like wildfire, burning away all the uncertainty and the sadness. The men who had killed her parents had returned, and now they would face the forest's wrath. Papa Wolf rose from his resting spot, his posture rigid and commanding. Luna moved to his side, her eyes filled with the same fierce protectiveness. The pack stirred, their low growls vibrating through the ground beneath Emily's feet. They were ready. Emily stood, her small frame now steady and determined. She knew what had to be done. She couldn't run anymore. The wolves had taught her how to fight, how to survive in a world that wanted to destroy everything she held dear. It was time for her to face the truth. The pack moved like shadows, their bodies fluid and powerful. Emily followed, her legs steady beneath her as she stepped forward. She wasn't the scared little girl who had stumbled into the forest days ago. She was a part of this place, a part of the pack. And now, the pack was going to fight for her family, for the forest, for everything they had lost. As they moved deeper into the forest, Emily's eyes scanned the trees, her senses heightened. The men were near, their voices low and hurried as they searched for something, someone. But Emily knew where they were. She could hear their breathing, their footsteps crunching on the underbrush. They were close. She raised her hand, signaling the pack to stop. The wolves obeyed, their bodies crouching low as they melted into the shadows, becoming one with the forest. Emily's heart pounded in her chest, but her fear had turned to resolve. This was no longer about survival. This was about justice. She moved forward alone, her bare feet silent on the soft forest floor. The wolves stayed behind her, their presence a constant reminder that she wasn't alone, that she was never truly vulnerable. Emily was the bridge between two worlds, the human world and the wild world of the forest. And as she approached the men, she knew that the pack would stand by her, no matter what happened. The men came into view, their flashlights darting across the trees as they scoured the area. Emily stopped just out of their line of sight, her breath steady. She didn't need a rush. The wolves were already in place, waiting for a signal. And then, just as she stepped forward, the pack attacked. The men turned in shock as the wolves emerged from the shadows, their growls vibrating through the air like a storm on the horizon. The men raised their weapons, but it was too late. The wolves were faster, stronger, and far more coordinated than the men could have ever anticipated. Papa Wolf charged first, his massive form moving with incredible speed. He collided with the first man, knocking him to the ground with a bone-crushing force. Luna followed, her eyes fierce, her growls like thunder as she took down another. The rest of the pack moved in, their bodies moving like fluid shadows, taking down the remaining men with precision. Emily stood at the edge of the clearing, watching with a strange sense of calm. She didn't feel the fear she had once known. She felt only the weight of what had been done to her parents, to her family, to the land she now called home. The wolves fought with an intensity that came from more than just hunger or instinct. It came from a deep-seated desire to protect their own, protect the forest, protect the legacy of those who had come before them. As the last man fell to the ground, the wolves stood over their fallen enemies, their eyes glowing in the dim light of the forest. Emily slowly walked forward, her feet light against the earth. She could feel the tension in the air, the heavy silence that followed the chaos. The pack turned toward her, their heads low, as if seeking her approval. She looked down at the men, their weapons scattered around the ground. She could feel no triumph, no victory, only the deep, gnawing ache of loss. Her parents were still gone. The men had been dealt with, but the damage had already been done. She could feel their absence like a weight in her chest, a constant reminder of the injustice that had been done to them. Papa Wolf stepped forward, his scarred face filled with a calm understanding. He moved closer to Emily, his presence comforting, as if telling her that this was not the end. There was more to be done, more to fight for. The bond between Emily and the pack had deepened in that moment. She was no longer just a child lost in the storm. She was a protector now, just like them. The wolves, the guardians of the forest, had saved her, and now she would save them. The days that followed the confrontation were a blur of silence and reflection. The forest, once a place of fear and confusion, had become something new for Emily. It had transformed into her sanctuary, her home, a place of understanding. She was no longer a frightened child fleeing through the rain. She was a part of something larger, a community, a pack, a family. But despite the comfort she found in the wolves, a quiet sorrow lingered in the depths of her heart. Her parents' deaths were still a wound that wouldn't heal. The men who had come into the forest, Maxwell's hired thugs, had been dealt with, but they were only the tip of the iceberg. Emily knew, deep down, that there was more to the story, more to uncover. Her parents had fought for the forest, for its future, and in their fight, they had left behind a legacy, one that Emily now carried with her, a torch she would never let extinguish. The pack sensed her grief, and they surrounded her with an unwavering presence. Papa Wolf never left her side, and Luna was always nearby, her calm gaze never leaving Emily. It was in these moments, with the wolves surrounding her, that Emily began to understand the depth of her parents' sacrifice. She wasn't just surviving in the forest. She was carrying on their work, their fight, for the future of the land they had fought to protect. But despite the peace the forest offered, Emily knew she couldn't remain hidden forever. The world outside was still waiting for her. She could feel the stirrings of the inevitable, the men who would come for her again, the answer she needed to uncover, the justice that would never come unless she took it into her own hands. The day arrived when Emily could no longer ignore it. She could hear the distant hum of machines in the forest, the unmistakable sound of logging trucks. The destruction that had taken her parents' lives had continued unabated, a constant presence at the edges of her world. She knew that she had to face it, had to return to the world beyond the forest. Papa Wolf was at her side, his eyes steady as she made the decision. The pack surrounded her, their growls a quiet but constant reminder of the strength they offered her. They had always been with her, and now they would stand with her in the battle to come. As Emily made her way through the forest, her heart heavy with determination, the memories of her parents burned bright. She remembered her mother's voice, soft and sure, telling her stories of the ancient trees, the creatures who lived within them, and the delicate balance that kept the forest alive. She remembered her father's gentle touch, the way he had taught her to listen to the wind, to read the signs in the leaves, and to honor the land that sustained them. The further she walked, the stronger her resolve became. She was no longer the child who had fled the storm. She was Emily Evans, the daughter of Sarah and David Evans, the protectors of the forest. And now, it was her turn to carry the torch. The sound of the logging trucks grew louder, a harsh reminder of the battle that lay ahead. Emily didn't hesitate. She pushed forward, the wolves moving with her in perfect harmony. Together, they approached the clearing where the trucks were parked, their engines running as workers moved about, oblivious to the impending confrontation. Papa Wolf growled low, and the pack stepped into view, their eyes gleaming in the dim light of the forest. The workers froze, their eyes wide with fear as they saw the wolves, standing like sentinels between them and the forest they were trying to destroy. Emily, standing tall among the pack, felt her heart steady. She wasn't alone. The forest was with her. One of the workers, a man in his 50s, stepped forward, his face pale. "What are you doing here, girl?" he demanded, his voice trembling. "You can't stop us. This is our land now." Emily's gaze hardened, and she stepped forward, her eyes never leaving his. She could feel the wolves moving behind her, the weight of their protection a constant presence. She wasn't just standing for herself. She was standing for her parents, for the forest, for everything they had fought for. "You don't belong here," Emily said, her voice steady, but carrying a weight that only someone who had lived through the worst could understand. "This land isn't yours to take. It belongs to the forest, to the creatures who call a home. It's time for you to leave." The man took a step back, his face now a mask of confusion and fear. What are you going to do? You think these wolves will stop us?" Emily didn't answer. She didn't need to. Papa Wolf took a step forward, his massive form casting a shadow over the man. The wolves circled the clearing, their eyes fixed on the workers. It was clear now there was no escape. They couldn't fight the pack. They couldn't fight the forest. The man's voice wavered as he called to the others. "Get in the trucks. We need to leave now." But it was too late. The pack had made their stand, and the workers knew that the forest was not a place they could control anymore. Emily turned and walked back into the forest, the pack following behind her. She didn't need to look back. The workers would leave. The forest was safe for now, but she knew this battle wasn't over. The fight for the future of the forest, for the memory of her parents, had only just begun. As the sun set behind the towering redwoods, Emily stopped at the edge of the clearing. She turned to Papa Wolf, her heart swelling with pride and loss all at once. She was still the little girl who had run into the storm, but she was also someone else now, someone who had a purpose, a future, and a family. And as the wolves stood beside her, their eyes watching the horizon, Emily knew one thing for sure. No matter what came next, she would never face it alone. The forest had chosen her, and she would protect it as her parents had before her. As Emily's journey unfolds, we witness the powerful connection between humans and nature, the unbreakable bonds of family, and the strength that comes from resilience. Her survival, not just in the wild but through loss and heartache, teaches us the importance of protecting what we love, standing firm in the face of adversity, and embracing the unknown. Emily's story is a reminder that true healing comes from within, from understanding our place in the world, and from the connections we form, not just with each other, but with the earth that sustains us. What did you think of Emily's journey? How do you relate to her struggle for survival and healing? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the HeartForce channel for more inspiring tales of strength and connection.